It's going to be an anxious night for many thousands of residents as more rain ravages our flood-affected regions. Reporter Stacey Lee joins us live from Virginia. Stacey, what's it like out there?
Jess, it started raining here about an hour ago, but just in the last 10 minutes, it's really begun bucketing down. So it's no wonder residents and farmers are anxious. As you can see, roads here are flooded. And if we take a look over here, this is just one of many farming properties in the area that's already underwater. So this rain will only make it worse. The Bureau's predicting between 15 and 40 mils in the next few days, which could mean the Gawler River could again break its banks. Clearly, this crisis is far from over as the number of homes and properties affected by it sadly continues to grow.
From above, the devastation's clear. The Channel 7 drone today captured these pictures over Virginia. The flooding began after the Gawler River broke its banks yesterday afternoon. Residents had no choice but to work through the night to minimise damage.
I was just trying to divert the water on the lower end of the farm behind my place, just so it won't go towards the houses. Trying to save the houses at least.
Gawler, Lewiston and Two Wells were also hit hard. A number of homes and farms have been inundated, including James Clark's.
Come out here this morning and came out to a swimming pool, so it just came in really, really fast.
Sao Van Nguyen says he's now hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket. The Chinese vegetable farmer isn't insured.
Yeah, very sad, but now what can we do? Up to God.
This is really hard. They work incredibly hard. It's a key part of our export, premium food and wine. So my empathy is with them.
During the wild weather, 2,500 families have sought refuge at relief centres across the state, and the risk of flooding's not over yet, with rain forecast this evening and tomorrow.
There is a chance that the Gawler River will break out and impact on the homes, and we're working with those residents to make sure they've got sandbags on hand.
Hills residents too are being warned to brace for the worst, with 100 millimetres of rain expected to fall over the Onkaparinga catchment. 3
weeks ago we had a significant rain event and there were communities impacted in those areas. They're the types of areas where we'd be encouraging people to prepare their homes once again.
As conditions eased today, several roads were reopened, but a major diversion's still in place around Port Wakefield Road south of Two Wells. And in the far north, power's finally been restored to Lee Creek and surrounding towns.
People have just had to drive out of town because they had nothing. They had no food, no hot water, nothing.
Gertie Taylor, 7 News.
And that's where Andrea Nicholas joins us live. And Andrea, police have just reopened the road north of the township.
That's right, Jess. There's huge relief here for motorists and local residents. Port Wakefield Road had been closed since midnight, but a short time ago, police opened one lane to traffic after the threat of flooding was reduced. As you can see behind me, there's still plenty of water on the roads, so they're monitoring the situation closely. But after testing it this afternoon, they decided the water level had dropped enough to allow drivers through. It's slow going. There are still major diversions in place on the route to and from Adelaide because of flooding at Gawler and Virginia. But as we've said, the flood impact has been far and wide throughout the northern region, and whole communities have been pitching in to lend a hand.
The tiny town of Bowmans, east of Port Wakefield, has been hit hard, swallowed up by floodwaters after the Wakefield River broke its banks overnight.
They tried to stop the water from coming through the fences, but it wasn't any good, and you better pack the kids up and evacuate.
Rodney Hurst's property was flooded and he's concerned more's on the way.
Our front was completely covered with slush and mud. Our back is completely covered with slush and mud. Our chooks, thank God, we had them up the top. The CFS has done all they can. I can't praise them enough.
Port Wakefield was isolated by the water after an emergency warning was issued.
I haven't seen this kind of water since, the 70s. A massive amount of water come down.
There's been a Herculean effort to protect Port Wakefield. A temporary levee of sandbags has been constructed and up to this point has been effective in protecting the town.
That was thanks in large part to what was literally an army of helpers. They worked steadily through the night.
Trying to assist in the stopping of water flow coming from the hills. Flooding the region.
But Port Wakefield was left a ghost town with businesses already suffering damaging financial losses over the long weekend.
We're losing a lot of business. Everyone's struggling, obviously, on a day like today when normally we'd be making a lot of money.
And the closure of Port Wakefield Road left many frustrated, calling it an overreaction.
I got a load of produce on that I've got to get to Queensland, and I've been sitting here for the last 2.5 hours and the water's only 6 inches high, which a truck can get through comfortably.
Across the northern region, levee banks were built to hold back the water, but they didn't stop the Gawler River from surrounding Dean Spencer's house at Lewiston.
We just noticed the backyard, it was starting to trickle in a fair bit, and then probably within an hour it was about a foot deep.
But despite the crisis, he managed to make the most of it. Gawler was also on high alert last night. Cars queued for sandbags in two wells preparing to protect their properties. And today soldiers help residents in Virginia sandbag properties. Floodwaters continue to be no match for cars. And Premier Jay Weatherill headed north to visit emergency crews at Roseworthy before handing out pies to the Army and volunteers during a much needed break. Megan Hopkins, 7 News.
The fierce storm that's battered the state for the past week appears to have passed, but not before leaving another trail of destruction. In the Adelaide Hills, roads resembled rivers with floodwaters inundating homes and businesses.
The Onkaparinga River running dangerously high. This Oakbank Road looks more like a lake. As the water moved downstream, homes in Blackiston were inundated.
The water was creeping in on both sides of my room, coming through the door and coming through the back wall of the house. It looked like a river because it's muddy and dirty.
Julie Draper's lived here for more than 20 years. Luckily, she managed to move most of her family's belongings to higher ground.
Quickly you move things you want to rescue, and I just hope that I did enough of that.
Now it's the carpet and walls that are the main concern.
Neighbour reckons there was a septic leak as well, so I'm essentially shoveling up water filled with poo.
This clothing shop in Aldgate flooded again. Tanya Milne's only been open for 10 weeks.
This is the 8th time floodwaters have come through my shop in that 10 weeks.
But it wasn't just the rain, ferocious winds took their toll too. Ron Hassan was leaving the Bridgewater CFS station when this massive tree fell on his car and nearby power lines.
As I was pulling out, I heard a crack. The tree was on top of me. A couple of seconds later, I don't think I'd be here.
But not everyone was so lucky. Early this morning, a train driver had to be rescued after being pinned down by a fallen tree while clearing branches off the tracks at Verdun.
Unfortunately, he's had a second tree come down after hearing a crack, striking him and pinning him to the ground.
He was taken to the Royal Adelaide and discharged several hours later.
So as the water levels now start to recede, authorities are urging people not to become complacent. The floodwaters have been unpredictable and you just don't know what they could have brought with them.
There's often debris and junk and rubbish that actually gets bound up in those water flows.
Stacey Lee, 7 News.
Good evening. The daunting clean-up efforts now underway following South Australia's ferocious and unprecedented storms. For Adelaide Hills residents, many popular roads will be no-go zones for months, but it's our regional crop growers that are being forced to start all over again.
Finally, a perfect spring day, but the view from above at Langhorne Creek looks anything but picturesque. As crops and vineyards sit below the water, locals have little choice but to get on with business.